What up, what up, what up? It's your boy Jew coming at you guys with another edition of What's the Word? Dirty Bird. Normally during the season, we do this on Tuesdays, usually from 11 a.m. To 12 p.m. But you guys know the season is over. And today is actually just a pop-up show. As you guys know, haven't been live for about a month because me and my wife did recently have a baby girl who turned 1 month old yesterday. So I've kind of not been on many live shows, at least my single live shows. I did do the heavy hitter show. I believe that was last week on Wednesday. So we still will be giving you guys live shows maybe once or twice a month for the heavy hitters with me, Mad Mike, K Styles, and Don. But today I do want to get into a little bit of NFL free agency talk, a little bit of talk about the NFL draft. As you guys come in, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button for your boy, share out this content so we can get the algorithm going and things of that nature. But I do appreciate each and every one of you guys. I know I'm probably catching you guys by surprise to be live on a Monday when usually I go live on Tuesday. But currently, I will be off for a little bit because of the baby being born and things of that nature on parental leave. So I'm gonna be giving you guys shows here occasionally, doing pop-up shows and things of that nature during the off season. Of course, we'll have the draft show in April, and usually we all go live. The heavy hitters and AFN and things of that nature, we all usually do like a live watch party for the draft. So we'll have some things coming for you guys. But with that being said, I'm gonna say what's up to those that's slowly popping into the chat. First one I see here is Nathan Floyd with the red and black. What's going on, man? I appreciate you joining me this morning. I hope all is going well with you. My boy Dre Murphy says good morning, everybody. How's everyone doing and feeling on this nice, pretty, sunny, warm Monday morning? Doing great, man. I just want to talk some, chat some Falcons football with you guys and chop it up with you guys because it's been a minute. But of course, I've been pumping out content, the draft prospects and things of that nature. A couple of free agency videos, mainly focusing on the Atlanta Falcons players and players we may bring in. Been giving you some of the trade rumors and things of that nature that I've been reading different articles, whether it's Sports Illustrated or whether it's just different articles I'm finding online about players that could be Atlanta Falcons in this coming year. So I really feel like, first off, I want to start with free agency because we know in a couple weeks free agency will open, and that always takes place before the draft. And basically, what I'm looking for out of this free agency is what type of players we're able to bring back. As far as if we're able to bring back Drew Dahlman, looking to see if the Falcons are going to restructure some of the contracts that we have to create more cap space, and also looking to see in free agency, are we going to bring in mainly defensive players? Are we going to try to sign a few offensive players? And that kind of will give us an idea of where Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris is leaning when we talk about the draft, like what they're looking to do in the draft. So it's going to be very intriguing and very interesting to see what the Falcons do in free agency. Right now, we don't have a whole lot of money, even though the cap went up. We still don't have a ton of money. So I'm expecting the Falcons to probably try to restructure some contracts. Maybe Chris Lindstrom. Maybe I don't know if they can touch Jake Matthews' contract again and try to restructure it. But when it comes to the salary cap and things of that nature, I'm not great with the salary cap. I'm not a salary cap analyst or specialist. So I'm gonna leave that to Terry Fontenot and those guys in the front office to get the job done and do whatever they need to do to get us some available money to be able to re-sign some of the guys that we have, because we have a lot of key pieces on this defense that are free agents. And over the last couple of weeks before the cap, was stated that it's going up, there was a lot of talk of Grady Jarrett may be being cut. David Onyemata may be being cut. And personally, just hearing those type of things, gave me cause for pause, because Grady Jarrett is the best run defender on this team, arguably the best player on the defensive line. David Onyemata also, those two guys are our best run defenders. So if God forbid if the Falcons had to cut those guys due to cap situation, that would leave a huge void on this Atlanta Falcons defense. And you guys know that I'm huge when we talk about the trenches. You know, I'm a huge advocate for the trenches, both on the offensive line and defensive line. And we've struggled over the last couple years to find pass rush and being able to stop the run. So if we had to cut Grady Jarrett, if we had to cut David Onyemata due to cap situation, that means in this draft they're definitely going to have to revamp, meaning the first couple rounds or maybe even all of these picks are going to have to be defensive type of picks if you lose your two top inside, pressure players and inside run stuffers. But with that being said, do want to say what's up really quick to Tony Hall that jumped in. What's going on, man? He says, good morning, Jew, Dre, and AFN family. Man, I appreciate you joining me. Share out this content, hit that like button for your boy. But like I was saying, like with this free agency, personally, what I think will happen, and this is just my humble opinion, and I've been saying this in my videos if you've been watching the different videos that I drop, I really feel like the Falcons are going to try to keep some of the guys that we have on this team, keep this secondary and things of that nature intact. So I expect the Falcons to try to re-sign Mike Hughes. I expect the Falcons to try to re-sign D. Alford. I don't see them moving on from those guys because we don't have a ton of money and because these guys are familiar with Coach Raheem Morris and the scheme that we should be running under Jeff Ulbrich. I really don't think that the Falcons are going to go out and try to make a big splash necessarily unless they're able to restructure because of the money situation. I really feel like they're going to try to do their best to bring in bargain type deals. As far as the secondary, I think that they may try to bring in a splash signing as far as the defensive line. If they have to, trade a pick in either this draft or a future pick, if they can get a big name like a Myles Garrett, if they can get a Max Crosby, I think that they're going to swing for the fences to try to get one of those guys. I've seen Khalil Mack, his name thrown out there as well, that he's a free agent as well. He could be a player that the Falcons look to sign. Personally, I don't think that Khalil Mack is looking to leave LA. I think he's going to try to resign with the Chargers, and Jim Harbaugh has already made it really clear that they want to bring Khalil Mack back. And Khalil Mack was thinking about retirement at the end of this last season. So I really don't see him moving across the country from LA to Atlanta, to be honest with you guys. But he's another name that I've seen out there. But I think personally, the Falcons are going to try to keep all of the guys that they have. Even Justin Simmons, he's another name for our Falcons at that safety position that joined the team last year and was convinced by Grady Jarrett, convinced by Jesse Bates, that we could try to make a strong playoff push. And he decided to sign with the team on a one-year deal. I can see him doing another one-year deal because he did state at the end of last season that he was interested in coming back after they did like the post game or end of season press conferences and things of that nature. When he spoke to the media, he stated that he would love to come back. He loved the leadership under Raheem Morris. He loved the players in the locker room and things of that nature. He said that he would like to be an Atlanta Falcon this coming year. So he's another guy that I would watch out for the Falcons to try to re-sign on a short deal and try to bring him back as well. Now, let me see here. Drake Murphy says, I hope and pray and wish they bring back Drew Dahlman, that bad man, Hodge, D. Alford, Mike Hughes. I haven't listened to your video on D. Alford yet, too, bro, but I wouldn't mind them bringing back Justin. Most definitely. Justin Simmons, I definitely think that those guys are – I think that all of those guys I listed could be guys that the Falcons try to bring back. I don't know based on the cap situation if they'll be able to bring back all of those guys, meaning Dahlman, Hodge, Alford, Mike Hughes, and I don't know if they'll be able to bring back all of those guys and Justin Simmons, but they may have to pick between the D. Alford, Mike Hughes type deal. They may not be able to bring both of those guys back if they're bringing Simmons back, but I could see them bringing those guys back if they restructure someone's contract, or I can see them bringing those guys back if they sign short deals. So like if Simmons signs a one-year deal, if you bring D. Alford back like on a two to 3 year deal and Mike Hughes back on a 2-year deal, depending on how much they're looking to get, you might be able to get them under the salary cap if we're able to restructure some contracts. The biggest one that I think is going to be kind of difficult to bring back, or he's going to cost the most money out of all the guys that we listed, was Drew Dalman, because the rumors are that Drew Dalman, he's like a top commodity. And that's why I did a video about him being like the top dog when it comes to the best center available. Being that he's hitting free agency, his name has come up as like one of the top free agents. I've seen teams like the Chicago Bears listed that may want to sign him. It's a lot of teams that are needy at the center position and offensive line position. And because Drew Dalman has turned himself into a really good center, over the last, I'll say, couple years since he's been with our team, he's developed into a really good player. There's a lot of teams that's going to be looking to throw a lot of money his way. So what I really think is going to come down to is if Drew Dalman, is willing to take a little bit less to stay with the Falcons, similar to what we've seen with Caleb McGarry. Caleb McGarry could have got a lot more money in free agency before we signed him back to that new deal, but he was comfortable playing alongside of Chris Lindstrom. He loved the offensive line room and things of that nature to coach Dwayne Ledford, and that's what convinced Caleb McGarry to re-sign with the Atlanta Falcons. So what I'm banking on when it comes to Drew Dalman is that he's so close with these guys in the offensive line room and things of that nature. He's so close with the coach and Dwayne Ledford that he made this decide, like, I'm going to stay with the Falcons. I might not be able to get the top dollar, but I'm going to try to get as much as possible, but to stay here because I'm comfortable, with the team, comfortable with the scheme and things of that nature. And let's see here. And Dre says, Jew, if we were to bring back D. Alford and Mike Hughes, what are you doing with Clark Phillips, the third? And what are we doing with Natron Brooks, who is on the practice squad? I would leave Natron Brooks on the practice squad and let him move up and down like they kind of did last year. With Clark Phillips, I feel like you can use him, use him as well, like they did last year when they subbed him in and out. At this point in the NFL, you need at least 4 to 5 good corners because a lot of teams now are running spread offenses. So there's times if you get into dime packages and things of that nature where you may need like 5 good corners. So Clark Phillips is still going to get his opportunities. And then we always know that injury is going to happen. So you never can have enough good players. That's what I always preach, is like depth. I always preach strength in numbers because injuries are going to happen throughout the season. So if you have really good guys that are playing behind the starters, that's always a good thing. That's never a bad thing. And it also breeds competition in training camp, in the preseason games. When you have a Clark Phillips, someone who's been trying to get that starting spot, it's only going to push him to be a better player. And it only pushed Mike Hughes and D. Alford and those guys to stay at the top of their game. But I definitely think that Clark Phillips is one of those guys. If D. Alford or Mike Hughes is let go and they're not brought back in free agency, I can see Mike Hughes stepping right in at that number 2 cornerback spot on the outside, or him sliding into the slot spot, because Clark Phillips has shown that he's a guy who can play both inside and outside when it comes to that corner position. And Tony Hall says less than 60 days until the NFL draft. I completely agree. Yes, right around the corner, coming in April. So I'm definitely intrigued to see where the Falcons go. Of course, I've been leaning towards the draft, going after pass rushers early in the draft, but it's going to come down to what the Falcons decide to do in free agency. But I still think even if you bring in some guys in free agency, like one guy, a splash signing on the defensive line, I'm either taking a defensive lineman, I'm taking like a nose tackle, an edge rusher, a pass rusher, or a linebacker. But whoever you take in that first round with that 15th pick, they need to be an impact player. And I consistently say, like, you need to bring in someone that can start from day one and that can develop, but be a development on the job type training. You need somebody that can come in and give you, play at a high level from day one. Not saying that they got to be the best player on the defense, but similar to a Keanu Neal, who we just seen retire yesterday or announced his retirement. When he came in 2016, he was an impact player. From the time he hit the field, he was a guy out there making plays. When you look at a Deion Jones in the year that we made it to the Super Bowl, he was a guy that was an impact player from day one when he hit the field. Devondre Campbell, he was another one. You put him on the field in that first year. We had so many of those guys that we hit on in that draft under Thomas Dimitroff, and that's what changed, the trajectory of that Atlanta Falcons team in 2016. Was you brought in a bunch of rookies that were on rookie deals that played at really, really high levels. They played like on Pro Bowl levels, which helped the Falcons, lifted the Falcons to the Super Bowl, because you had guys that came in, forced turnovers, played at a really high level on that Pro Bowl type level. And that's what changed the trajectory of that team, because 2016, that team was not projected to be a team that was going to make a deep playoff run or make it to the Super Bowl. But we had all of those guys that performed or outperformed their contract. And that's what caused the Falcons to be in the Super Bowl, similar to what we seen just last year with the Philadelphia Eagles. What propelled the Philadelphia Eagles to the Super Bowl was they had guys like Cooper DeJean, who they drafted this year. They had guys like Quinyon Mitchell, who they drafted this year. All of those guys were rookies. You had a second-year player in Jalen Carter. You had Jordan Davis in his, I think, second or third year. So they had a lot of young guys outperform their contract and play really well and play at a really high level, play up to like a veteran standard type of level, which elevated their team. They had a Zach Bond at linebacker who was on a $1 million deal, but ended up being an all-pro and was a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. So that's what the Falcons need to do in this draft. I don't feel like last year we did a solid job of playing the younger guys. Like, you brought in Brandon Dorless, you brought in Ruka Rororo, you brought in Brandon Trice, who got injured. I don't feel like last year we had enough of those rookie guys make an impact on the team last year, and they weren't given any opportunities to make, a splash or be able to get playing time. And I really feel like that hurt the team last year. Of course, I stated numerous times that I feel like coaching was the main issue for the team last year. That was the biggest problem, is there was no identity for the team. And that was Coach Raheem Morris, was the problem in that instance. And I also feel like scheme was a huge problem as well, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Not so much on the offensive side of the ball, but on the defensive side of the ball, there was a lot of turmoil as far as, to me, the scheme was just not the right scheme to be running. Guys were not put in positions to succeed. We seen, defensive ends, outside linebackers dropping into coverage, running 20, 30, 40 yards down the field, and Matthew Judon, Caden Ellis, and Nate Landman, instead of allowing those guys to attack the line of scrimmage all season long, you had Nate Landman trying to cover guys, tight ends, cover guys in the slot, which we know lateral quickness is not his, that's not when he's at his best. So I really feel like that was the biggest issue with last year's Falcons team, is the coaching and the scheme was not right. Yes, there were opportunities for players to make plays at times where they messed up, like mixed field goals and fumbles at the wrong time, interceptions at the wrong time. But I really feel like coaching was one of the biggest issues why the Falcons team missed the playoffs last year. And let's see here. And Nathan Floyd says Bears and Jags are the top two teams, I think, to be after Dolman. Yep, I can see those two teams trying to go after Dolman because they have a lot of cap space and they don't have good offensive lines. Neither one of those teams. Let's see here. And Jonathan Bell says, "What's up, preacher? Jew talk. Keep dropping these facts on lunch so I can stay long." I can't stay long. Rise up. I appreciate you joining me, Jonathan. And Xavier Littman says, "Hey, Jew, what's your thoughts on the league salary cap and how that may affect our free agency? I hear it should go up around 25 million." Yeah, I'm hearing that. I don't know how much space the Falcons will have, because I've seen different things online. And I kind of stated this earlier. I'm not a cap specialist, unfortunately, but with it going up, I feel like there's ways around the salary cap. You just have to know how to do it. And Philly's proven that. And that's why I say Harry Roseman, the Philadelphia Eagles GM, is the best GM in the league, because he's found a way to cook the books. This man was able to re-sign Smitty, the wide receiver, Devontae Smith, a wide receiver. He's making like 25 million. He was able to re-sign AJ Brown, who's making like 25 to 30 million a year. He was able to re-sign Jalen Hurts, who's making over $200 million a year, or $200 million in his contract. He was able to re-sign all those guys on that offensive line. Mailata got a new contract. What's the other? Johnson, the right tackle on that team, got a new contract. Then he was able to bring in a litany of guys on that defensive side of the ball. So it's a way to go get around the cap. You just have to know how to do it. And I really feel like that's been the Falcons' biggest issue is, yes, there is a salary cap, but you have to learn how to manage it. We just have to do a better job at managing it. And at this point, it's like it has to be a way where they can go in and restructure some of these deals, maybe let go of some players, but restructure some of these deals to be able to make a splash in free agency or bring back some of these guys. We shouldn't have to cut every single person to get the salary cap down. And if that's the case, well, we do end up having to cut Grady Jarrett. We end up having to cut David Onyemata and cut off a lot of the guys that we have that are our playmakers. That just tells me that they didn't do a good job of managing the books, and that the draft picks that we've gotten over the last year, it wasn't the right way to build this team. If you can't find a way to keep some of these guys and bring in help on the defensive side of the ball, it goes back to what I said. You shouldn't have drafted offense 3 or 4 years in a row. You shouldn't have done it. If you can't find a way to bring back some of these guys on the defensive side of the ball, because your team can't be lopsided. You can't have a great offense and a horrible defense and expect to win the Super Bowl. You got to have at least an average defense, and you still have to have playmakers on that side of the ball. It can't be all of your playmakers on the offensive side of the ball and your top end guys on offense, and then your defense, you hardly have any playmakers. Like, yes, you got Jesse Bates, but you're going to need more than just Jesse Bates to have a solid defense. You're going to have to bring back some of these guys, or you're going to have to draft at the top of the draft. You're going to have to draft some of the better defensive players in the draft. You can't consistently keep waiting. And I consistently say this, you're not going to continue to find diamonds in the rough. Thinking you're going to have to find a Max Crosby or, a fifth rounder, fourth rounder that's going to perform at a first round, level or to the first round standard. It's hard to do that. It's hard to do that. If you look in the league, and I've stated this numerous times in my videos and in my live shows, if you look at the guys that are, the top of the league, when you talk about the best pass rushers in the league, those guys are first round picks. Myles Garrett that we want, he's a first round pick. If you think about Aaron Donald that was in the league, if you think about, I believe he was a first round pick. If you think about Khalil Mack, he was a first round pick. The only guy that I can name, and I consistently say this, that's not a first round pick, that's like one of the best edges in the league, is a Max Crosby. The top end guys, TJ Watt, he was a first round pick. JJ Watt, when he was in the league, he was a first round pick. Like, if you want that guy that's going to be that dog, that's going to be able to dominate on the defensive line, usually those guys go within the top 10 or go in the first round. Finding those, top end pass rushers and wait until the late, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth round, it rarely happens. It rarely happens. So you're going to have to start using some of that capital and going after some of these defensive prospects that are at the top of the draft, the guys that go to, the Georgias, the guy that goes to the Alabamas, the guys that are known for being good pass rushers in college. If you look at the college, majority of, the guys in the SEC or these top guys that we're hearing about in this upcoming draft, those guys are going to be first rounders. All of these guys that we're talking about. Let me see here. And Dre Murphy says, me personally, I hope hope and pray and wish that we trade back and pick up more picks. Since we only got 4 picks, we have we ever traded back in the first round? Though only in the later rounds, though. I don't know when it comes to the Falcons. Like over the last couple years, we haven't been a team known to trade back. I don't mind trading back because you only have 4 picks this year, and that probably will be wise to trade back to get more picks. But when we start picking players, we just have to be wise about. I don't want to see another wide receiver drafted in the first round at this point. I don't want to see necessarily another offensive top offensive weapon. The only thing that I can, um, justify if you draft anybody in the first round, as far as this year on offense, is an offensive lineman. If you want to go out and get a left tackle or a right tackle because you're like, we're going to get Jake Matthews' replacement, we're going to get Caleb McGarry's replacement, so be it. We're going to get Drew Dahlman's replacement at center in the first round, so be it. But anything outside of an offensive lineman, I don't want to see the Falcons drafting any more skill position players in the first round. Not this year. Probably not this year or next year. I mean, we've seen literally Ray McLeod have like 600 to 700 yards receiving, which means you don't need a top end guy to get yardage to make plays. The Falcons have enough playmakers already on this roster. I stated this for the last year or two. Kyle Pitts is not even getting thrown the ball because you have Bijan Robinson, you have Drake London, you have guys that didn't even play this year in Rondale Moore, who's also a playmaker. You have even Cordell Hodge coming in making plays for you on offense. So you don't need, to me, any more wide receivers. You don't need any more tight ends necessarily, unless you're moving off of Kyle Pitts. The Falcons do not need any more skill position players. And skill position players, those are the players that you can find in the later rounds. You don't need to draft a wide receiver in the first round for him to make an impact, because Ray McLeod was not a first round draft pick. And this dude actually came out and had a decent season. Dude had 600 to 700 yards receiving, and he was like the third or fourth option. So that just goes to show you this Falcons team has an embarrassment of riches. Like when it comes to offense, the Falcons don't need any more skill position players whatsoever. What's going on? My bro Mad Mike is in the building. What's going on? Y'all make sure y'all go and hit that like, subscribe button on his channel as well. King Richie says, what's good, Juju? What's going on, man? Mr. Wide's in the building. He says, good afternoon, Jew. What's going on, OG? Y'all make sure y'all go show him some love on his channel as well. OG be breaking it down. Both him and OG Truth Hurts. And Dre Murphy says, Jew, I know, right? Tell me all about it, bruh. Best player available. Miss me with that offensive players in the first round. Like you said, you're getting offensive lineman replacement or replaced 100 point blank in the period. Yeah, that's the only way I can justify it. I can't justify taking another skill position player in the first round. You got way too many guys. Like you see every year, there's a wide receiver, there's a running back, the Isaiah Pacheco's of the world, that's really good running backs. You don't need to take any more skill position players at this point in the top of the draft. You got Mooney, you got Drake, you got McLeod, you got those three guys still under contract. You got Kyle Pitts still under contract. That's enough talent right there. Bijan Robinson's under contract. Tyler Allgeier's under contract. You don't need any more offensive players at all. Now, if you want to just bolster, if you decide we're gonna trade Tyler Allgeier, or you're gonna trade Kyle Pitts, at that point, the only way I can justify if you move Kyle Pitts, the only way I'm justifying it is you go out and get Tyler Warren out of Penn State. You say, well, we still want to have a juggernaut on offense. We want another guy that can fill the void that Kyle Pitts didn't fill. We want a tight end that's more physical, but still can get yards like a Travis Kelce or a George Kittle type. Then go get Tyler Warren, because he's a guy that I can guarantee you he's going to come into the league and he's going to have his way. He's going to get yards. He's going to be able to block. He's going to live up to that billing of a first round pick. But unless you're telling me that you're moving Kyle Pitts or you're moving off of some of the guys that are on the offense currently, I'm not drafting offense whatsoever. Like I said, unless it's offensive line, I don't want to see any more offensive players drafted by the Falcons in the first round, because that's been the issue with the Falcons over the last decade. You consistently draft all of these wide receivers, you draft all these offensive talent, which is fine, but you can't have all of this offensive talent and then turn around and say you want to have a dominant defense. The teams that have a dominant defenses are teams that draft high in the draft. They take defensive players. They, draft defensive players. When you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, a lot of those guys are first round draft picks that they got on that defensive line. When you look at the Washington Commanders, back-to-back years, they took Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen. They built through the draft. It built that defense, and those guys are first round picks. Those are not fifth and sixth and seventh. Those are not late draft picks. If you look at the Eagles, they do the same exact thing. All of them guys that they got that you're looking at, the Jalen Carters, the Jordan Davises of the world, those are first round draft picks. The Quinyon Mitchells, they take guys that are at the top of the draft, the cream of the crop, and they pick of the litter. They take the best players that are available that's there, and that's how they built that defense. And then they built their offense similarly, but they built their offense by going into free agency as well and making trades and things of that nature. So, like I said, if the Falcons want to have a dominant defense, go out and draft guys in the top of the draft. Don't wait. Don't wait. The playmakers are at the top of the draft. You can find a dominant rough here and there. That occasionally happens. But if you're thinking that you're going to make a living off of drafting, guys in the later parts of the draft, and that you're going to have a dominant defense, the chances are that's not going to happen. That's just if you just go look at just what research shows, this is not just an opinion, this is fact. If you go look at what research shows, if you look at any of these teams that are dominant on defense, 9 times out of 10, them guys that's on their front 7 are first round, second round, they high draft picks. They're not third and fourth and fifth and sixth rounders. Mad Mike says, would you prefer the Falcons draft a tackle in the later rounds to back up Jake and Caleb, or first round? This is a good question. To be honest with you, I think that Jake Matthews, as long as he's not looking to retire, just looking at his genes, his genetics, his father played in the league a really, really long time. So I believe it was Bruce Matthews, if I'm not mistaken, is his father. But I know both of his father and his uncle played in the league back in the 80s to 90s. And they played like 17, almost 20 years. His dad played a really, really long time. So unless Jake Matthews is telling you, like, I'm about to probably hang it up soon, or the Falcons don't want to, bring him back, I would bring in a guy in the first round if you're trying to replace your left tackle. Same thing with Caleb McGarry. If you're looking to move off of Caleb McGarry, I would take somebody in the higher portions. When it comes to the trenches, I'm leery, especially when the offensive lineman with taking guys later in the draft. Doesn't mean that it can't happen, because Drew Dalman was not a top draft pick. But if you look at the guys that we have, Chris Lindstrom, he was a first round pick, and he's a dog, that very dominant, arguably the best guard in the league. If you look at Matthew Bergeron, he was a trade up in the second round, early second round, but he had a first round draft grade by a lot of teams. The rumor was that the Dallas Cowboys were going to take him early second round. They thought about taking him in the first round, but he was their early second round pick in their war room. But they end up going a different way. The Falcons end up trading up ahead of the Cowboys and taking Matthew Bergeron off the board. So when it comes to those offensive linemen, I would say first round over waiting to the later rounds. Now, if they believe that Jake Matthews and Caleb is going to be here to stay, then at that point you can go with a later round, because at that point you're looking for somebody that can be a backup, and you're looking for somebody that you can develop. So at that point, it can be a guy in the second, third, fourth round. You can kind of develop them and see if they turn into something where they can turn into a starter. But if you're looking for, like, cut somebody, like, we're going to trade Jake Matthews or we're going to trade Caleb McGarry, and they got to start day one, give me one of them first round, one of those guys in the first round as far as offensive lineman, because we need somebody that we can guarantee that's going to come in and be a staple. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, because just because you're a first round pick, let me state this again, just because you're a first round pick don't mean that you're going to play well off the rip either. But the chances are that there's a higher likelihood that those top guys are getting those high draft grades and have good tape, that they put good things on film in college. Chances are they have a better chance of being good than somebody that was a later draft pick that didn't show it in college, doesn't have a high draft grade because the scouts done looked at him and he has some issues. In those cases, the chances are that they're not going to be day one starter. So they're going to struggle a little bit more. Like I said, you have your 1 and 2 here and there where guys are really good and you weren't expecting them to be good off the rip in their later round, later draft picks, but that rarely happens. So I don't fool around when it comes to the offensive line and the trenches. I'd rather take somebody early, somebody that's proven, somebody that's done it on the college level consistently, and put out good film when the scouts go and look at their tape from college. They can say, yeah, I think this guy's going to be a 10-year starter in the league. That's what I'm looking at. Now, of course, you're going to have to still hit on some of those later draft picks, but replacing offensive lineman, defensive lineman, first round, second round. I'm looking in the high picks. Where I'm looking in the lower parts of the draft is running back, wide receiver. That's where you go look for those guys, because it's going to be a ton of running backs. I mentioned one in Auburn's, Jarquez Hunter. I talked about him. He's projected to be like a third or fourth round draft pick, and Jarquez Hunter put up crazy numbers at at Auburn last year. And he's a guy similar to a Tyler Algier. Tyler Algier was not a top draft pick, but he should be a starter in the league. If Algier was not on the Falcons and on another NFL roster, he would be a starting running back. He's starter running back caliber, and I think he was drafted in the 5th round, if I'm not mistaken. So let's see here. Mr. Wyatt says, I could see a utility offensive lineman, but the 15th pick would be traded and we'll upgrade that way. Yeah, I could see that happening as well. Like I said, if you trade back, that gives us more draft capital. And I think that would be the wise thing to do. If I'm the Falcons, come hell or high water, I'm trying to keep that offensive line that you have together. I'm banking that they're going to try to be able to bring back Drew Dahlman and convince him that, hey, these guys that's in this locker room. You're familiar with Dwayne Ledford. Y'all guys are really close. We're trying to keep this unit 5, that 5 guys up front, that unit together. Hopefully we can convince him, to stay. But that can't be guaranteed, because I'm also an advocate for players getting their money, especially in the NFL, because the contracts are not guaranteed like the NBA. So I'm all for guys getting paid. So I don't want Drew Dahlman to take a huge haircut to stay with the Falcons, meaning he leaves 30 million on the table because he want to come back with the Falcons. Now, if he decide to do that, more power to him. But I'm for advocate for players getting their money too, because we know all it takes is one play for your career to be over. And then I'm not that selfish as a Falcons fan to say, leave all of this money on the table. Now it's going to be a trade-off. If he goes to the Bears or if he goes to one of these bottom feeder teams, the Jaguars, chances are you're not going to win. You'll get your money. So sometimes that comes into play as well. You got to weigh, do I want to make all of this money, or do I want to have a chance to actually compete and be a contender and compete for a Super Bowl? Because sometimes that comes into play as well, where I've seen players get their money, they get a bag, but they go into a bottom feeder team. They go into the Cleveland Browns, but they got paid. So he going to have to weigh that as well. So hopefully all of that factors in, and hopefully we can get close to what another team is offering for Drew Dahlman. So it's not like he's taking a huge pay cut just to be a part of this team if he wants to stay, which from what I'm hearing, he mentioned also at the end of the last year that he wants to be back with the Falcons. But we know that it's a business. And we know that the Falcons, if we don't have that money that he's looking for, I'd rather him go get his money elsewhere. If the Falcons, if he's trying to, they're going to make him take a huge pay cut just to stay. And let's see. And Xavier Littman says, Jew, you hit the nail on the head. Yes, we more likely will make a trade to acquire more picks. However, we have to come out this draft with at least 3 to 4 starters on the defense. I somewhat agree with that. It depends on who we can bring back in free agency. And that's why I say all of this that I'm saying is speculation. And that's what makes it hard, even when making videos right now, is it's all speculation. We don't know how much money the Falcons really have. And that's why I say I don't like speculating the salary cap, because last year I was speculating the salary cap saying the Falcons don't have no money. The Falcons don't have any money. And then they turned around and traded away a 3rd round pick and got Judon. And then they turned around and got Justin Simmons. And the whole talk last year was that the Falcons didn't have any money either. So I'm like, where did they find this money to bring in a Justin Simmons and bring in the guys that we brought in? Because those, to me, were 2 impact starters. You brought Judon in, who's an immediate starter. You brought Justin Simmons in, who was an immediate starter. And these guys were like the best defenders on their team. So that's why I don't like speculating the cap, because there's ways around it. It's just knowing how to manipulate it. And to me, the Falcons, to me, over the years, at least under Terry Fontenot, they found ways to manipulate the cap where we thought there was no money. They manipulated it and did what they needed to do. So in this instance, this is why you get paid the big bucks. The salary cap is real, but also your GM is real and your financial office is real. So they should have a way where they can maneuver to bring in who they need to bring in. But as far as the 3 to 4 starters, I would love for the Falcons to find 3 or 4 starters in this draft. I don't think that there's going to be 3 or 4 new starters from this draft, though, playing day one. I really don't think so. I really feel like all of this Grady Jarrett talk is just speculation. I think he's going to be back. David Onyemata, he's the one that I think is on the chopping block, but he still may be back if they restructure some contracts, like I mentioned earlier. And then if D. Alfred or Hughes come back, those guys are starters most likely, unless you bring in a Will Johnson from Michigan, and then you're like, well, he ain't starting over Will Johnson because I drafted him in the first round for a reason. But I really don't see 3 or 4 new starters. I think there's going to be I'll say maybe about two to three new starters on the defense. Now I could see them bringing in some starters from the free agency. That's why I really feel like the starters are going to come from. I think it's going to be maybe 1 or 2 starters from the draft, but I think in free agency, that's where you're going to see them bring in some veteran guys that can play a particular role to be a starter. And then the guys from last year, I expect those guys to step up. So like Braylon Trice, if he's back from his injury, Brandon Dorless, Ruka Rororo. Personally, if I were the coach of the Falcons, those guys are going to have to take on bigger roles on this team. So if you move a David Onyemata, insert Ruka Rororo, he's going to have to be a starter. He's going to have to take a step forward. Insert a Brandon Dorless. You're going to have to step up. Like those guys are going to have to play. You can't just draft guys and just have them sitting in the background. Like those guys have to step up to the forefront, especially when you're taking them early in the draft. Like Ruka Rororo, they took him in the second round last year. So he's a guy that should have gotten more snaps, personally to me, last year. But since he didn't, he's going to be a guy this year that he should be able to carve out a role on this team, and a big one. It shouldn't be he playing in spots like we're pulling them up from between the practice squad like we were doing last year. He should be a guy that's going to actually get a lot of playing time this year. Same with Brandon Dorless. He's a guy that's going to need to play. Braylon Trice, he's going to need to play. So that's what I'm looking at. And here you go right here. Mr. White says the problem with the process is nobody has the mindset to endure the total process, which takes more than a season. That's the the comment of the day. I agree with you. I keep preaching patience, patience, patience. Like we got to be patient. We want to win now. Everybody wants to win now. But at the end of the day, it takes time. That's why I say even with Raheem Morris, it's like I made the whole video. I think that was my last live show where I talked about, is Raheem Morris the right man for the job? And my whole thing was we got to just wait and see. I can't say whether he is or whether he isn't based on what he showed us last year. But what I can say is we can't dissolve what he did or the foundation that he attempted to build last year with winning 8 games. I don't want us to demolish that and say, wipe it out, get rid of this whole coaching staff, clean this whole coaching staff out, and let's start from ground zero again this year. Because if you do that, I mentioned that in that video, in that live show, chances are you're not going to be a playoff team this year either, because the next coach you bring in, he may not like the guys that are already on this roster. They may not fit his scheme. So that means that it's going to take him at least 2 years to purge that locker room, bring in his type of players. You know what I'm saying? So it's a process. As he stated, it's a process, but we as fans, we just want to win now. And that's not always the case. Like we've been spoiled in this microwave society to think that it happens overnight. But I keep saying that the teams that we are consistently seeing win now, it took the Chiefs a long time to build that team up. Andy Reid was there a long time before they started winning Super Bowls. He was there with Alex Smith. He was there with Jamal Charles and that whole group. He's seen that group go through. And then they finally got Pat Mahomes. They drafted Tyreek Hill. They drafted Kelsey. So it took a process. That didn't happen overnight. That wasn't a 1 or 2 year fix and boom, they were Super Bowl contenders and winning Super Bowls back to back to back. That was years upon years upon years of building, losing, and continuous to just stack pieces on top of each other. And that's what I'm saying with this defense. We need to continue to stack pieces. We did it on the offense. You stack pieces. You stack Pitts, then you turn around, you stack Drake London on top of that. Then you turn around, you stack Bijan Robinson on top of that. And then you finally got your quarterback. Once the whole house was complete, you said, okay, now let's put the cherry on top. We got Michael Penix. So you set on offense. Now we need to take that same approach, and it need to be the same approach on defense. Go get your edge rusher. Go get you a nose tackle. Go get you a linebacker. Go get you a safety. Go get you another corner to go alongside of AJ Terrell. Got to keep building it. And Dre the Boxer, what's going on, man? Salute to you as well. I appreciate you joining me, as always. And let's see here. And Georgia Texas boy says since 2020, we're on GM number 2, head coach number 4, offensive coordinator number 3, and defensive coordinator number 7. The standard starts from the top. Let's hope we got it right with Fontenot, Morris, Robinson, and Ulbrich. Exactly. That's exactly like that. This goes perfect to what Mr. White was just saying, the OG, and what I was just saying. Like, you got to give it time. You got to be patient. Just wanting stuff to happen overnight is not going to happen that way. The Eagles didn't win overnight. They built it, and then it happened. I keep telling people, Andy Reid was with the Philadelphia Eagles. They were in NFC Championship game, NFC Championship game, NFC Championship game. They finally got to a Super Bowl, lost to the Patriots. Then he was still there, and then he was fired, and then he went to the Chiefs. But he never got the job done in Philly, but they kept bumping their head in the NFC Championship game, and they never broke through. They stayed right there in the NFC Championship game, finally got to one Super Bowl with McNabb, and even once they got there, they still didn't win the Super Bowl. So that just goes to show you patience. Patience is a virtue. Your patience will pay off. As they say, if you build it, they will come, but you got to build it. And a lot of times teams don't want to build and fans don't want to wait for things to get built. We want it to be the coach is hired year 1, boom, you in the Super Bowl. It don't happen like that. Your culture don't change overnight and you in the Super Bowl. It takes time for you to build it up. You got to keep building, stacking it on top. Like I said, last year was a failure, but it still was an improvement. You went from being 7-10 3 years in a row with Arthur Smith. You went 8-9 last year. Even though the standard was the playoffs and it was a failure, you still won one more game than you won last year. So let's see this year if you can go out and get, say, 10 wins, 11 wins. Can you win? Can this team muster up 3 more wins? I would say yes, because I can argue last year you had what 3 to 4 games where it came down to the last second. The Washington Commanders game, you lost in overtime. The Panthers game, the last game of the season, you lost in overtime. That's 2 games right there that changes your fate. You lose that game to New Orleans in New Orleans. That was a close game. I mean, pretty much every game. The Kansas City game where you have the pass interference no call on Kyle Pitts. You're right there in that game, a 1 possession game. So like majority of our games outside of the Denver game, they're 1 possession. You're right there. You're a flip of the coin away from you being an 11 to 12 win team to you being an 8-win team. And there you go. Instant gratification is a drug that never works. Exactly. It always fails. You want to have that instant gratification, and it always comes back. It always crumbles. It never lasts. It never lasts. So having that mindset of instant gratification, you're gonna be disappointed. It's gonna leave you disappointed. And let's see here. I'm gonna scroll down a little bit. I appreciate you guys interacting with me. I see a lot of different comments here. So Dre says, Jew, do you think Jeff Ulbrich is bringing in any players over from the New York Jets? And if so, what players do you see him bringing over to Atlanta? So the ones that I've heard, DJ Reed, the corner, he was at number 2 corner, opposite of Sauce Gardner. I can see him possibly being brought over. Quincy, I can't think of his name. Quincy Williams. I believe he's the linebacker. He's Quentin Williams' brother. that plays with the Jets, the nose tackle out of Alabama. His brother plays inside linebacker. I believe they say that he's a free agent. He could be a guy that Jeff Ulbrich tries to bring over. Now, I don't know if he will want to leave because his brother plays with the Jets. So maybe he tries to re-sign with the Jets, but I could see that. And then there's a kid named Jamian, I believe, Shorewood. He's another name that I've been seeing that they say he's like a linebacker type player. So he's a guy like a Swiss Army knife. He can rush the passer. He's a linebacker, outside linebacker. But he can also play inside linebacker like a Caden Ellis type. They say that he's really good as well and was with the Jets. And they said that Jeff Ulbrich kind of helped develop him. So those are the guys that I'm hearing that the Falcons could try to bring over. The one that I'm thinking that I would like the Falcons to bring over, but I don't know if it will happen, is Hassan Reddick. And that's because he had that whole holdout and things of that nature with the Jets last year. And I don't know if they're going to let him go. Like last year, they held on to him, and then he finally just went back and played. He's played for the team, only played a couple games, and I think he only had like 1.5 sacks or something like that. He was a guy that was a hot commodity for the Falcons last offseason when he was with the Eagles. So I don't know if he's a guy that's going to be like on the chopping block type deal with the Jets. If they don't try to like keep him, he could be a guy I can see the Falcons go after as well, but it just depends. And let's see here. I'm gonna scroll down a little bit. Yep, and I mentioned Georgia Texas boy says also remember Dorlus has a second round grade prior to the draft. Exactly. So he need to play. Like I still don't know what Brandon Dorlus is, and that's my problem. I don't have a problem, with drafting guys and things of that nature. The Falcons, to me, they sometimes they'll draft guys and then they won't play them. So you don't know what they're capable of. The prime example would be a guy in D'Angelo Malone. We kept hearing he's not showing us what we need to see in practice. We don't know what he can do. And then he gets in the game and gets a sack as an outside linebacker. Well, see, you got to give a guy opportunity because we talked about the Falcons last year. Like D'Angelo Malone, we don't have enough athleticism on the defensive line. We kept having that conversation, but D'Angelo Malone is one of those guys that's ultra athletic. So he should have been a guy that should have been playing more last season. And that's what goes back to coaching, goes back to Raheem Morris and Jimmy Lake. Why wasn't D'Angelo Malone getting opportunities? Because when we were struggling and we weren't getting any pressure, at that point, you need to go to your bench and see what you have there and just see if there's anybody else that can come in and give you a spark off your bench. That's when you give guys opportunities. When your starter's not living up to the hype, they're not playing up to snuff, that's when you give other guys opportunities. That just creates, as I said, breeds competition. When you see guys are not performing up to the level you think they should be performing at, that's when you say, okay, we're going to make you inactive this game, or we're going to put you on the bench to try to make them hungry. And we're going to play the backup and see if the backup can take your job. That's what it's about. That's what forces guys to step up. He's either step up or, as they say sometimes, get stepped on. You either one of the two. You either going to perform, or if you ain't living up to it, we're going to give somebody else an opportunity to see if they can perform and get the job done. Xavier let me say Sherwood, we have a player similar to Kinlaw already that just needs PT. We need more speed on the front seven. I agree. I heard Kinlaw's name come up, Javon Kinlaw. He had a really good year last year. In I believe it was he played with San Francisco, but I don't see the Falcons bringing in Javon Kinlaw. But if they did, I wouldn't be mad about it because he's a big body guy. He was a guy that I wanted them to draft coming out of college. He's a big dude, 6'4", 6'5", and he's gained weight since he's been in the league. He's over 300 plus pounds. So I could see them looking at a Javon Kinlaw, but I don't know if they'll sign him because technically I think you can find what Javon Kinlaw does. You can find that in the draft, to be honest. You could develop that. You can develop a Javon Kinlaw. To me, I'm always leery of a guy that plays really well in his contract's year. And that's kind of what was a Javon Kinlaw type deal. If you go look at his stats, he was a guy that couldn't hit the field either. With the 49ers, he was not on the field a lot. And then this last year, all of a sudden, he had his best season in his contract year. So I'm nervous about players like that underachieve, and then all of a sudden now they break through and have one really good season. That scares me. That scares me a lot of times when I see guys that's not consistently giving you, being that player they could be. Now maybe he's a late developer, late bloomer type deal where he just all of a sudden now he's finally developed, but we'll see what happens. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to bringing it in because we need a guy that's a nose, and Javon Kinlaw can play the nose position. So the Falcons think that he's a guy that can, get the job done. If you decide to move on from, Onyemata, and you want to bring in another guy that can rush the passer from the middle of the defense and stop the run, maybe you go after Javon Kinlaw. And let's see. And Uncle Steve says, "What's up, Jew? I agree with you about coaching, especially with the young talent on the D line. Maybe Olbrich has a little bit of DQ in him, meaning working with young guys like DQ did in Dallas." And y'all, shouts out to Uncle Steve's Lounge. Y'all go check him out. I was watching his live show, I think last week, both him and Big Low. Y'all go show them some love, man. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button for them. They had a really good conversation just about last year. They talked about some of the draft picks, free agency, and things of that nature. But I agree with you, Uncle Steve. Like, I really hope that Jeff Ulbrich can bring back some of what DQ did. One thing that I can respect about Dan Quinn that I think people kind of laughed at and we kind of took for granted was Dan Quinn had a vision. He had a vision for the team. He had a lot of little quotes and things of that nature that rub people the wrong way, like fast and physical, and all of the little stuff he used to say, we're pissed off, and all the stuff he used to say at the press conferences. But one thing I can respect about DQ is there was a vision. When he said fast and physical, you knew that Dan Quinn was going to have linebackers that could run, meaning Deion Jones, meaning Foye Oluokun, meaning Devondre Campbell. You knew that he was going to go after guys that was fast, even on the defensive line, like a Vic Beasley. Tat McKinley didn't pan out, but I do think that Tat McKinley had it in him as far as he could have been a better player than he was. I really feel like Tat McKinley had the wrong mentality and wrong attitude. I don't think that Tat McKinley wasn't talented. I think that he was a player that they kind of reached for because Jeff Ulbrich knew him from UCLA. But I think that Tat McKinley never lived up to the talent that he had inside of him because of his attitude and things of that nature, how he went about his business as far as professionalism. But I agree with you. I really hope that he can work with these young guys similar to what DQ did. Now, a lot of people forget, Foye was one of those guys that was working with Jeff Ulbrich behind the linebackers that we had. We had Devondre Campbell. We had Deion Jones. He was a guy that we developed. He was a guy that Ulbrich developed, DQ developed. Those guys work with them. So hopefully Ulbrich can bring that back to the team as far as developing these young players. And hopefully he can bring back some type of vision to the defense. Because I really feel like last year, and I keep saying it over and over again, you got to have a vision. The Bible says without a vision, the people perish. Like if you don't have no type of vision for what you want the team to look like, that's a problem. Because the players need to know, what's your vision for this team? What's our identity? Are we a run first team? Are we a passing team? Like, are we a explosive offense and try to just create turnovers on defense? That's what the 2016 Falcons was. That's what Dan Quinn preached. Dan Quinn preached about the ball. He's preaching the same thing there in Washington. His whole thing was, we're going to score points. We're going to take the ball away. We're going to put our team on short fields. We're going to give Matt Ryan and the offense ample opportunities to take, give them more snaps and things of that nature to score more points. But his whole philosophy was creating turnovers, the ball, the football. Always go after the ball, punch the ball out, get interceptions, give the offense more opportunities. And I really feel like that was one of the biggest issues with Raheem Morris last year. He didn't come to the podium. He did say outrun the South, but he didn't give the team any type of vision for the fans to know, what are we building? For me personally, I say that they're building the 2016 Falcons all over again. That's what I say. When I looked at the team just based off of last year and how this team is constructed, this Falcons team is constructed to score a lot of points, try to create turnovers, and try to outscore teams. This team is not built to be a shutdown, lockdown defense. Just looking at what we got on our roster right now, present day, and what we had on the defense last year, it wasn't built to be a lockdown defense. I really feel like if you had to compare which unit is better, the offense or the defense, I think hands down the offense is the better unit out of the two. So being that that unit is the best unit out of the two tells me that this is an offensive minded football team. So we're looking to throw the ball, we're looking to put up points, and then we're hoping that our defense can be bend, don't break. That's what we were last year. We're going to, try to lock teams down. Once they get in the red zone, teams are going to be able to move the ball between the 20s. But once they get into the red zone, we would try to suffocate teams like a boa constrictor. We would try to, okay, now we're going to tighten up in the red zone, and hopefully we can hold teams to a field goal. Is that the best way to play football? Personally, I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to play football. I would prefer a dominant defense like the Philadelphia Eagles presented, where it's like we're going to rush the passer. We're going to be able to drop 7 because our front 4 can get pressure. But the way that we're built, we're not built that way. So I say that we're score a lot of points, cause turnovers, force turnovers. That should be the best. That should be the mindset, personally, if this is the Atlanta Falcons team, because that's what I see how this team has been built. Majority of your weapons are on the offensive side of the ball as far as your better players. The Drake London, the Bijan Robinsons, the Penix, the Kyle Pitts, your offensive line. That whole core unit on the offense is better than the defensive unit in every level. Personally, that's how I feel about this team. With that being said, I'm gonna get ready to wrap things up. I'm gonna answer a few more questions and then I'm about to wrap it up. But let's see here. Matt Mike says, what will Jeff Ulbrich bring to the Falcons defense that would be different from Lake? So good question. So I think Jeff Ulbrich will be more aggressive. I think that he will understand, as far as the linebackers, how to get them in position. Meaning he's going to understand, because he had a Deion Jones, he had a Devondre Campbell. He's been successful. In 2016, they were successful. So he knows, him and Raheem Morris, both of them really should know. That's why I said last year, Raheem Morris, if you're going to run Dan Quinn's defense, at least do it right. I said that last year. If you're going to run cover 3, you were there when you went to the Super Bowl. You were on that coaching staff, Raheem Morris. You were on that coaching staff, Jeff Ulbrich. So what they should know is we need athletic linebackers, period. We need athletic defensive players. To run a cover 3, you need athletic defensive players, especially on the second level at your linebacker positions. You need guys that can run sideline to sideline. And I really feel like the biggest problem with Jimmy Lake, and I consistently say this, he put guys in bad positions. Anytime you asking Matthew Judon to cover consistently, you're doing something wrong. Judon should never be running 15 yards down the field trying to cover a running back or cover anybody. If anything, the only thing Judon should be doing, if it's in coverage, and he did this in New England at times, is just buzz the flat. I mean, you just dropping him in the flat area just randomly. Like when y'all thinking it's a zone blitz and all of a sudden you think pressure's coming from Judon's side and he's standing up in that 2-point stance, all of a sudden the quarterback thinks that, oh, I got that quick, hook route. You drop somebody right there in the flat. Or I got this quick running back swing pass. You drop one of your linemen in the flats. That's the only time that Judon should be covering. He should never be back turned running down the field like we seen in that Carolina game where he was chasing their running back 30 to 40 yards down the field when he ran that wheel route. That should never happen. Never. So that's what I'm saying. Like, those were the type of deals where it's like, we seen that multiple times last year, whether it was Lorenzo Carter, whether it was whoever was playing on the edge. If a team, their running back flanked out, all of a sudden, in certain instances, we've seen our linemen, whoever it was on the edge, trying to chase down a running back, which should never happen because they're not athletic enough to do it. If you're going to do that, you better have guys that are athletic on the outside. D'Angelo Malone can chase a running back 20 yards down the field because he's that athletic. But personally, even we had Vic Beasley, who was super athletic, I didn't want to see Vic Beasley dropping into coverage, to be honest. I feel like when you're doing things like that, it's foolish because you're not using the player in their best way. You're not using their strengths. Judon is a power rusher mainly. Why would you want a power rusher covering? That doesn't make sense. Or why would you want your best pass rusher dropping in the coverage? Doesn't make sense. So I mean, that's my biggest issue. So for me, Jeff Ulbrich, what he's gonna do, he's gonna simplify things, which he said. The beauty in running cover 3 or Dan Quinn, the beauty in his defense was you can play fast because guess what? We're running a vanilla defense. How Dan Quinn's cover 3, the philosophy is vanilla is crap, it's vanilla, but your athleticism is going to cover up for how vanilla our defense was. That's what the Legion of Boom was. The Legion of Boom's defense was very vanilla, but what made it special is you had great athletes. You had Cam Chancellor, who could run flow sideline to sideline. You had Earl Thomas, who could cover really well both hashes. You had 2 corners that were legitimate corners in Richard Sherman. At one point, they had Brandon Browner. So you had 2 press corners. So you had guys that were super duper athletic. But the Falcons last year, we didn't have a team that was super duper athletic, especially in our front 7. So you can't run that same style defense and think we're going to be super vanilla and have average athletes and still get the same production. That was the biggest issue. And with that being said, shouts out to Michael in the building. He says he dropping a 5 in the chat. What's going on, man? I appreciate you. And shouts out to Nathan Floyd. He says 100. And Georgia Texas boy says Vic Beasley didn't want to see himself in exactly. He didn't want to see himself in coverage, and I didn't want to see him in coverage either. I don't never want to see my 300+ pounders backpedaling. I don't want to see my 285-pound Judon, outside linebacker, defensive end, trying to out sprint a guy 40 yards down the field and expect him to win that matchup. The football is about matchups. We talk about it all the time. Football is about matchups. That's just being foolish. You asking guys, you're putting guys in a situation knowing they're not going to succeed doing that. So that's trying to make guys fit into your scheme instead of building your scheme around what your guys do best. But with that being said, man, I'm going to get ready to jump out of here, man. I appreciate you guys continuing to support the channel. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button for your boy. Hit that like button for your boy. I expect to do this a lot more. Like I told you guys, me and my wife just had a beautiful daughter. She's 1 month old now, so I've been spending a lot of time with her and the wife. But I'm going to be doing more and more live shows and things of that nature as things ramp up as far as free agency. Y'all stay tuned because I'm going to be dropping videos when we start signing guys, dropping in breakdowns on what the player can do, how I feel like the Falcons are going to use them. I'm going to be giving you guys content about still draft prospects, looking at the combine this week to see how some of these guys scores and things of that nature. But y'all stay tuned to the channel. I have a lot more coming for you guys. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up, be blessed. Peace.